Hey, so good morning. Today is August 7th, and we are continuing on our book study on how to sell network marketing without fear, anxiety, or losing your friends. We are starting part 3. Part 3 is all about effective listening. And so chapter 7, how to listen effectively. Success comes to those who listen. Because my question to you is, who likes to be told? None of us want to be told what to do, right? Or how to solve our problems. And most people's inclination, and certainly mine, is to tell people because I know the answer for their problems, right? But I know when talking with my husband, a lot of times I just want to talk about something to figure out myself, but he wants to solve the problem. So he's always telling me, you can do this, and you do this, and and it's like, that's not as effective as when we can talk and share our thoughts with someone so we can figure things out on our own. So how to effectively listen. So what do you think effective listening is? Wendy or Phyllis, what do you think effective listening is?
Well, I think for myself, one of the things we do with Toastmasters is when everyone speaks, we also have a quiz master to see that everyone is listening. So certainly effective listening includes being able to feedback what we heard, but more importantly too is to gain clarity as to what was being meant between the lines of what was actually being said. And so really when we're present, then we're more able to really hear in between. And if we don't understand it, then be effective in asking for clarity or further explanation.
I love that. I love that idea of that quiz. That's a great idea. And do you find that it helps?
Well, we do that at Toastmasters, but what I am saying though is that just pay attention, pay attention, be present, pay attention, and really I find that it's so much more interesting and enjoyable when I'm very present with someone and wanting to understand further, even though my mind might have an idea, just be present into what they are saying.
And I love that Toastmasters is conditioning you to be a more effective listener. And listening is a skill. It really is. It's a skill that most people don't do very well. So this is why Michael Oliver, throughout the last 6 chapters, really is hammering home the idea: listen, 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 listen. That really is the message. So this is his definition of what listening is listening to others without prejudice, judgment, or interpretation, and putting one's agenda aside will draw people to you like a magnet. Along with the ability to ask questions, knowing what to listen for, and will create a field of energy that will draw people to you. So remember, our potential partners are not negative or positive. It's what we say to them or how we listen to them that's going to cause them to be negative or positive. We could take a group of people and draw them to us, or we could take a group of people and push them away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I really like the aspect without prejudice and judgment, interpretation. So again, think about your past experience this weekend. Were you judging people? And, I find it's very easy to be very judgmental.
Yeah.
So effective listening is saying to not be judgmental, is to put that aside, just to be open. So he goes on to say, effective listening takes work, but the rewards are outstanding. Listening forces you to slow down, and your questions will be better quality, resulting in better quality answers. Now, this is an interesting term. Lazy listening will cause you to ask questions that do not fit the context. So you ever notice that you're talking and people want to ask you questions, but then they ask you a question, it's kind of out in left field, and think, where'd that come from? That doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I notice more. Oops, sorry, Wendy.
Yeah, I was just agreeing. Go ahead.
I was just also noticed too that sometimes when I'm speaking, that the other person may just completely change the topic.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about that, so they move on.
Yeah, or they're not.
I did that this morning to my husband. He was talking about something that I did not want to rehash and go through it all over again, the same blah, blah, you know. So I just changed topics completely. And sometimes I could do that and he won't catch it. But this morning he said, like, we weren't even talking about that. Why are you saying that? Like, you don't want to talk about what we're just talking about? And it's like, no, I don't want to talk about this. I'd rather change the subject.
Well, that's smart listening too, though. Yeah, in relationships, I've done that, and it's been very smart. But when we're looking at it from the perspective of the discovery process of understanding, because, you know, when I think of someone, and if I notice myself going to judgment, I'm finding I'm able to remind myself periodically now, it's like, but I have not lived their life.
Right.
They've got, you know, at least 100,000 or a couple 100,000 of life. And if I grew up in their circumstances, I may be, you know, I don't know. So it's not my business. That's how I remind myself, kids, not my business. They might be looking at me and thinking, so I'm trying more and more, I'm separating myself so that I'm coming from my heart, but not one of, you know, thinking about what they're thinking, what I'm thinking about them, all that kind of stuff. Just keep it simple and listening and from the heart.
I like that term heart, you know, that you're listening from the heart, and that is without judgment. I like that.
Well, Michael mentions it in the first chapter, the first page here, heart math. So that's something I haven't looked at, but it has come up a couple times now. He says in here, the wonderful book called Heart Math, that when we listen with our heart as well as our mind, that there's it will differentiate us from the vast majority of people.
Right.
Heart Math. That'd be a good homework one.
So why should we want to effectively listen? You know, what's in it for us, as you saw on distributors? You know, if we're just focusing, on our use on a business, what's the benefits? The benefits of effective listening is listening creates the value in you and what you represent. So if you're an effective listener, they're going to be more open to what you have to offer. Listening makes you appear smarter because you're learning from them. If we're talking all the time, we're not learning. But if we're listening, we will learn from others. Listening eliminates mistakes. And then we're going to go into the 4 rules of effective listening. So I like that part, that it creates value, that you appear more valuable to the person that you're listening to. And they become more open. It's reciprocal. Okay, rule number 1, be present. So you ever notice when you're talking, you know, let's say you're at a restaurant and you're talking to someone, and the person you're speaking with is looking around the room, they're looking at the waiter, they're looking at the people. How do you feel when that happens? First of all, has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, in party situations, they come up to you because they're uncomfortable standing there by themselves, but they're looking around and talking and talking to you, but their eyes are everywhere but.
And how does that make you feel, Wendy?
Well, it's like I feel like I could just slip away and they'd still be looking around and talking even though I wasn't there.
That'd be a great experiment. You just got to step away. That'd be.
You're laughing, so you must have had that too.
Oh, I have a friend. I'm not going to mention any names. A fairly, I guess, close friend, and she's just awful like that. I mean, we've been friends for many years, and she'll come down, and the whole hour will be all about herself, and then, okay, I'm going to go, bye. Or when I do start speaking, she'll be looking around the room and she'll talk to someone else if it's at a party. Like she completely tunes it. I'm thinking, okay, am I not interesting? And then she'll catch herself. Oh, sorry, I just got ADD or ADHD. She'll make a joke, but she's just the worst listener. And how does it? It makes me feel like, okay, either I'm not valuable, that she doesn't feel that what I have to say is valuable in any form. I feel disrespected, and I don't really like her because, well, I can't say I don't like her, but I like her less because I don't feel that she's the least been interested in me.
Yeah.
She just seems a person with two huge ears and no face and mouth. And my role is just to listen to her all the time.
Well, that opens up the whole idea around communication. In that too, I'm becoming more, if I'm noticing something like that, and that also helps us to be stronger in our businesses, I believe, in asking people questions, is if I'm in a situation, because I have a friend that's quite similar too. It's a lot about her. Boy, I'm saying I'm realizing this morning. But just recognizing if I'm feeling it, I'm going to start to say something now. Not mean, not like, hey, are you, depends who it is, but actually just kind of stop and really look at the person and have that true communication, because we're in society now where that is becoming more and more important, is that we know and express with each other more truths. We're not necessarily saying everything we see or hear, but just the whole idea, if I'm feeling that, now I want to say something about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My sister and I've gotten really great with our communications now, and recognizing and speaking up when we do experience something like that.
I like that idea.
You had someone texting while you're talking to them?
Yeah, I stop and look, and it's like, so what are you doing? Yeah. Or who are you texting? Yeah. If I need to text, I do like to, sometimes I ask, and sometimes I say, excuse me, this is an important text. I'll be with you in just a quick minute. And actually, I guess it would be good too to actually get acknowledgement from the other person. So again, a communication.
Mm-hmm. Ask permission. And sometimes if you are dealing with something and you need to stop the conversation and send a quick message and ask them the permission, or let's say you're having a meeting and a phone call's coming in, let's say, I don't know, that's something that you don't want to miss. And I think it's okay to say, sorry, I need to take this call. I'll be just a minute. I've been waiting for this call for 2 weeks, for example, things like that. But that open communication. Yeah, be present. How do you feel when you aren't listened to? Not great. No. So what does being present means? It means concentrating on the speaker. So that's, so really using your body language. So good eye contact, not thinking about what you're going to say next. NLP technique is to drop the tongue. So loosen the jaw, drop the tongue. That'll stop the chatter in your brain. And just really focus your energy on that person. And look at listen to what's being said, but also their physiology. What's their eye movement? What's their expression? What's their body movement? Look at the whole being. Because so much of communication is not the words. It's the words, it's the tonality, and it's the body language. So if we're so up in our head trying to figure out our own agenda and what we're going to say, we're going to miss what's being communicated with the whole body. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone where you're really in the zone of listening and you have that sensation and that focus on the other person? Have you ever been listening to someone, or have you ever felt the other person has been listening to you?
You know what I had trouble with this weekend? There's one character who's really, really loud. He likes to talk a lot, and he, this is all attention seeking, and he just, like fish stories and it's hard to it's hard to kind of maintain that eye contact when you're thinking like you're such a BSer. So I think I listened to him more than anybody else. So one small pat on the back for me.
Mm. Mm.
Which only made him want to talk to me more than anybody else, which was interesting.
But I have felt at times when I've met people to get to know them and basically, for any other better word, prospect them for USANA. So I've connected with them. They know we're going to be talking about USANA. They know I'm going to be sharing some information, but we get together and I really get into this listening zone. Have you ever felt that when you're really listening to someone, like there's this magical energy? It's like your energies between the two people come together and mix. It's really a wonderful sensation.
And it's different than just a conversation too, because I know of a couple of people I'm pretty close with, and sometimes I find that they may listen just to kind of detail it, break it down, like what are you trying to say here, rather than actually enjoying the enjoying the conversation. That's the key, is when you're truly enjoying the conversation. And if you're not, then notice it and maybe change the topic or change the focus.
Right, because when you're in that enjoyment stage, your energy is much more positive, right? Your energy vibrational levels go up, and so do theirs, and you have this great rapport, and they like you, and people will do business with who they like. So,
sorry, Sheila, one analogy, it's kind of like eating. Some people eat just because it's like, well, I know I need to eat. Whereas, and it's good for me, or eating this because it's good for me, rather than also eating, it's like, oh, this is delicious. And the enjoyment of eating. So it's the same as a conversation, actually enjoying the conversation, not just because it's conversation.
And I think what we're talking about, being present and really listening, is easier on a one-on-one basis, and it's probably different than just a social gathering. Let's say if you're sitting around the campfire and everybody's just kind of having a few drinks and kind of relaxing, and it's this is a more conscious decision to listen and help the person be heard. So this, I would say, let's put this more into a prospecting context, when we're getting to know the person and we really want to understand the person. Because active listening takes energy, and it does take work. But I used to have, I don't know if you remember this, there was Dorcas and Carol on my USANA team. Phyllis, did you ever meet Dorcas and Carol? Wendy, you might have.
Yeah, I think I did, yeah.
They were like amazing listeners, and they were probably the best listeners I've ever met. And when I would meet with them, they would go into this open, being present state. Now I've learned that they've had NLP training. And they would go into the state and they would ask me these questions. And it was like, oh, why is this person interested in me? And they really do want to know about me. And wow, this is really unusual that they're just genuinely want to learn about me and how I feel and, and life. Like it was such a surprise, and I always instantly liked them, because very few people have this type of listening skill. And they were really amazing at USANA because of this ability to listen. And Carol, by the way, was in Toastmasters for many, many years, and probably improved her listening ability through Toastmasters as well.
I would expect so, yeah.
So the reason I'm sharing these couple stories with you is that this is super important to be able to develop this skill. It really is. So rule 1 is to be present. Rule 2 is to be acknowledging. So acknowledging with body language. So again, what does that mean? That means good eye contact, leaning forward. Because if you're leaning forward, you're into what they're saying. If you're leaning back and your arms are crossed, you're not, unless they're leaning back and their arms are crossed, like mirror and matching. I did a follow-up call with my car salesman this past week, and what I noticed is I was mirroring him. Like we had a good rapport. He was talking to me about other opportunities he had looked at recently. And I noticed, oh, I'm actually mirroring how he's sitting and how our arms are positioned. And I was doing that without even realizing I was doing it, but because we had such a great rapport. So you can also mirror and match intentionally to get into rapport, to get into the sync with that person. So if they're leaning back, you lean back. If they lean forward, you lean forward. But generally, good eye contact, leaning forward and nodding the head will indicate that you're really listening. The other thing is feeding back and summarizing and clarifying. So how do you feel about that? So again, Oliver's talking about not to make an assumption. Don't assume what the person's feeling. And he gave an example of a woman and her husband left her, and her friend said, oh, you must be feeling terrible, your husband left. And she said, no, I was trying to get rid of him for years. She was actually in a happy state. So, you know, don't assume you know how that person feels. It's better to ask, so how do you feel about that? For example, when my mother-in-law died, most people would assume that I felt very, very sad. And part of me was so relieved and actually happy because she was suffering so terribly. And it wasn't any quality of life for those past 3 years. And I felt that when she actually passed away, it was a real blessing. So in that way, it was a joyous moment because I knew she wasn't suffering anymore. So again, if people just assumed I was really sad, that was an incorrect assumption. So a good question is, how do you feel about that? You know, and to get the person talking. So in a USANA context, what would be an example of someone sharing something? You're meeting with someone, you're going to share some USANA information, you're getting to know them, you're into that 15 minutes before the presentation of getting to know them more. What kind of question can you ask them? Like, how do you feel about that? What would be something in context?
What are you asking? What would we ask them in the 15 minutes? In what context?
So when you're meeting with someone, you're going to do a
okay, I see.
There's generally 15 minutes. This is what I do. 15 minutes when I first meet with them, I get to know them better. Because a lot of times I'm prospecting and presenting to people who I barely know. So I spend about 15 minutes getting to know them and what they need. So a question is, so how do you feel about that? Maybe, for example, they may not have energy to do their job or to be able to get up early or something. So you can ask them, well, how do you feel about that you don't have the energy? How do you feel about that? You know, or if they are overweight and they're, you know, how do you feel about that? Or if their children are sick, you know, or they don't have enough money, you know, how do you feel about that?
That's a pretty forward question, eh? How do you feel about being overweight?
But, you know, if it's in conversation.
Yes, right.
They're frustrated. They hit menopause. They're putting on belly fat. It's like, well, how are you feeling about being in menopause now?
What about like one that's an inviting one? What's the most exciting thing in your life right now?
Okay.
And say, you know what, and that all opens up where they are at. And it's like, you know what, I couldn't tell you what's the funnest thing I've done recently or something that's been exciting. And, you know, well, and it can open up a door in that way. And perhaps saying, well, what do you love to do? What's something you haven't done for quite some time that you would love to bring back into your life?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good feeling, you know? Mm-hmm. And so as much as we also want to point and have some focus on what their difficulty is, it can also be nice to find out what is happening. And maybe they're kind of bored, and that can open up the whole idea of a partnership business side of it as well.
Ah, that's a good point. I like that. So a variety of questions will open up the doors, and I like that one because that could bring up, boredom.
Mm-hmm. Or if it's something exciting, you could explore it further, and it's like, really, water skiing, cool, that sounds awesome. So what have you, you know, or and then let them expand and feel good around it as well. Not let them, but I mean, encourage a person and say, wow, do you get enough of that? What else do you like to do? And it can open up a whole new, and then it's like, wow, that's really, really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're doing the presentation, tie that specifically into the athlete, say, as in that perhaps example.
Mm-hmm.
Or in just the benefits of USANA and the increased energy and health and continuing, and how would you like that to be? Now, this is where we can bring in our basic qualifying question. Ask them, now, if you're able to know that you could maintain and have that ability to be able to do that for many, many years to come, is that something that you're excited to look forward to, or is that something that you're still able to do with ease? And then that may open up some other possibilities around their specific health concerns or wanting to live a healthy life.
So those are all excellent questions on a positive note. That can lead you into the USANA conversation more. All good. I could tell from experience, Phyllis. Good basic qualifying questions. Those are from the MLM University or network. What was that? I know
that's the MLM. Yeah, that's university. And by the way, I just posted a shareable on the Global Energy team.
Assignment completed.
Assignment completed. I love this picture.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but I will later. Okay, so feeding back, summarizing, and clarifying. So again, feeding back. So what you're saying is, so because people could be talking and I think you just asked me a question like that. You're basically, when I asked a question, you weren't quite understanding what I was asking. You said, well, what are you saying? Or can you explain that better? So it's give feedback, because if you're not understanding what they're saying, or if you are, it's good to, or you think you are, it's good to rehash it. So what you're saying is, or these are the instructions, do this, 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 did I get that right? Or I sense that you're upset about blah, 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 is that right?
Yes, that's really important too, is if we get kind of a feeling, trust the feeling, it's like you seem a little unsure about that. Like if they drop an eyebrow or their facial expression, to be free and open, and just open to what it is. And say, yeah, actually, I'm kind of wondering about that. I don't know if we really do need vitamins, Or I've, and then that the trust grows when they know that we are not there to convince, but to understand and educate.
And a question, just spinning off that, is why do you feel you don't need to take vitamins? And really be open to what they have to say. Because if we jump and say, no, you need vitamins, you can't get out of your food, and you like jump all over them and tell them all these facts, they're just going to clam up and shut down. But if you're open to hearing their perspective, they will be more open to hearing yours.
Yeah, and it's so important. Like, I think of certain topics, if someone tried to convince me about something, I'd be like, you need to be quiet, or I'm going to go talk somewhere else. So, yes, that really, truly, oh, that's so interesting, So what has your experience around vitamins been? Which is a little more open too. So sometimes knowing why and the negative, or just what has been your experience around vitamins. I'm curious.
I am curious is a great question.
And
to start with, I am just curious because it brings down your defenses and theirs, and they become more open because you're becoming more open. So I love the phrase, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I didn't take out the word just.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Tell me more. I'm taking out just because just is a short form of justification. And I'm aware of justifying or with other people. So more and more my communications are becoming more and more interesting.
Good. I'm glad you pointed that out. So you were listening. I didn't even catch that. I am curious. All right, verbal pauses. So verbal pauses are gold. So when you ask them a question, it's really important to be, to stop and listen. Give them time. And I noticed, for example, when communicating with Adeline, this is a challenge for me, and I'm practicing this, is that she needs time to process then she'll answer. So at first, when I used to always like, okay, she's not answering, I'll jump in with a new question or give her the answer. So I'm practicing with Adeline is that I'm giving her the time, the silence, and just waiting for her to process and answer. And
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because otherwise sometimes we get that inclination to re-explain it. Oh, let me just say it again in another way. And it's like, just be quiet for a minute and let me.
And with Adeline, she's, and I also learned this with NLP, with their eyes go up, they're going and they're thinking and they're putting pictures together. And so when the eyes are shifting in different directions, they're actually, it's like going back into the old database, and they're working on the answer. They're imagining, they're pulling out information. So when they're looking up, it's just have to give them the time to pause, and silence is golden. It really is. Sometimes what a little trick I do if I'm actually at sort of like doing a presentation, a lunch presentation, or a coffee meeting, if I ask a question and if I have the habit I want to jump in and say something too quickly, I'll have a sip of water. I'll just have a sip of water and I'll just calm myself down and I'll just stay present and let them answer.
That's a good idea.
And Michael Oliver says the reason we don't like silence is because our fear of losing control of the conversation. But he said the opposite is actually true. If we give them time to answer, we stay in control of the conversation because we're going to listen to we're going to hear their next thoughts. Okay. Well, and then another example, he said, if they ask, is this network marketing? He's suggesting we say, yes, it is. Do you know anything about it? Because we don't know if their view on network marketing is positive or negative or what it is. So if we a lot of people jump to a defensive position, we're doing ourselves a disservice and them. So is this network marketing? Yes. Do you know anything about network marketing? Tell me your experience with network marketing. Those type of open-ended questions.
Yeah, or what do you know?
This will reveal why the question was asked. Okay, rule number 3, be accepting. Listening and accepting is very powerful, a powerful personal persuader. So accept with judgment, accept with prejudice, accept without statements, accept without interpretation, without assumptions. So I'll just give you an example of how listening also does not mean you're agreeing with them. I think a lot of times we equate, if we're openly listening, that means we're agreeing. That is not the case. We can listen without judgment, prejudice, and just with genuine curiosity at a heart level. I was this past week having a massage with my massage therapist, and we talk about all sorts of stuff. She's very chatty. So we had mentioned we're getting in politics, and I was expressing how unhappy I was that our current prime minister was basically pushing for legalizing marijuana, or it has been legalized. It is in the process of being legalized, and I wasn't happy with that. And she had the complete opposite opinion. It's like, no, she said, that's a great thing. I'm really happy that they're legalizing marijuana. So at this point, I could have got defensive or angry or tried to push my agenda, why I didn't. But what I did was I said, oh, that's very interesting. Tell me why you feel that way. So she went on for about 10 minutes of why she felt that legalizing marijuana is a good thing. And actually, she had some really good points. So I practiced not judging, not being prejudiced. I was genuinely interested in her opinion, and I was fascinated that it was the exact opposite of mine. So I wanted to listen and hear her. And she had some excellent points. And after the conversation, I just said, thanks for sharing that with me. I really learned a lot, never thought about those points. And we really had a great conversation. That doesn't mean I agreed with her, or it could be I agreed with her, but I listened without judgment.
So you respected her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's saying Yeah, a result of the respect you show to their point of view without having to condone their thinking or compromise your own values. Wise people are good listeners.
Okay, the last one is be curious. And Phyllis, you demonstrate this really well with all the questions you have, is that curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So this
Well,
is
it is actually interesting too, really, if you think about it. It's very interesting to understand why a person thinks what they think. And as you just saying with Michael there, to let go of trying to judge it, just be curious. Just be curious. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Be curious. Don't judge.
Yeah, opinions they're not a threat or anything. I used to really feel I needed to kind of validate and, the whole justification, everything. And more I'm realizing, no, I don't need to. No need for that.
So getting back to the example about someone who feels that they don't need to take vitamins. And what was the question you had asked to get them to share their opinion and why they felt that way, Phyllis?
That was just an example, not a person, but coming from a state of, well, what, that's for, if the person said, well, I don't really feel I need vitamins at all, I get it all from my food, then I would like to explore further and say, that's interesting. You know what? I can totally understand that, because that's where we were brought up with eating food. What's your experience been around vitamins? I'm curious to understand that further.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
And then once they express themselves, then we can understand, okay, is it that they just don't know? Is it because their doctor said something? Is it something that they read? Is there not,
or their granola?
Yeah, was it an experience that they used vitamins and didn't see any results? So depending on the experience, then we can address and share with them information that we have that may change their opinion. For example, if they...
sorry, Sheila, or for them, not for us to change your opinion, but for them, because that's what he says here on the page before. He says that by being curious, or 2 pages before, what we're just talking about, you've gained an understanding, and the other person may have subconsciously questioned or evaluated their thinking and beliefs. So that's kind of the ideals. If we can ask something that they can think, oh, like you did with a massage therapist and marijuana, it's like, oh, well, I hadn't looked at it in that way. And then don't try and convince from there, but just they would be more inclined to listen to us and reconsider their position and maybe even change it when we're more accepting.
Well, I'm just thinking in my personal experience with people, let's say, an objection, and this is getting out information and objections, and so one would be, I don't take supplements, and if we ask them why, I'm curious why, and if they say, well, I took a Centrum and I didn't see any results, that then opens up the opportunity for us to provide some education. So in the sense that, would they be open, you can ask them, would you be open to hear a little bit more? I took Centrum and it didn't work. Oh, okay. Have you taken the other supplements? No. Would you like to hear a little more information about how taking USANA might give you what's the difference between Centrum and USANA, and how USANA could give you some results? If I could show you how USANA can help you have results, would you be open to hear more about it?
Yeah, and be curious too. I'm curious to understand now, when you did take Centrum, what motivated you to take it?
Initially. Mm-hmm.
Initially, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, it's because either they have a cold or they've got low energy.
Mm-hmm.
Or they should. So like you said, the education piece helps the understanding to grow.
And I think the key is to have, how do you lead the conversation and listen so that then they become open to hear more about what you have to offer or say. So it's a conversation, actively listening and having them become open to what you have to share with them. it's by practice, it's almost like an art form. You know, it's hard to actually say how do you lead them through the conversation, but we've all been effective. I know, because you and I have sponsored many, many people and have many, many preferred customers. So it's this dance of this wonderful conversation, being open to them and leading them into sharing information, and they become open to what you have to offer. So the problem is if we jump down their throats and offer the solution before we get this understanding, you know, so I'm thinking, you know, then they're going to be turned off. So getting back to maybe people who you're hanging out with them, and I'm just thinking, Wendy, this past weekend, they're unhealthy eaters, they're eating lots of high glycemic carbohydrates, they're overweight, they don't have the energy, they sleep in, they're feeding their kids crap. What kind of conversations can we have with them to have them become more open to maybe a healthier lifestyle? Like, how can we lead them into that realization that, first of all, do they, you know, I would think, okay, do they think that they're feeding their kids healthy? Are they selecting these foods because it's convenient, because the kids like it? Did they see a commercial that said these fruit roll-ups are actually fruit? Like, there's so many kind of questions that we can get them talking about what they're eating, you know, and maybe their intentions. Do they feel healthy? Are they happy with where they are? Maybe they're not prospects even, you know. Maybe they feel like, I think you mentioned that they're going to live forever and they're invincible because they're young. So I don't have all the answers or even the questions to ask, but it's within the context of the conversations to be open.
Yeah, I was very curious as to why she ended up in the state that she's in, just from...
Is Heather you're talking about?
Yeah. And I kind of went back to my psychology training, where people that just let themselves go like that have experienced intense trauma when they're young and just don't feel that they're worth much.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
kind of
yeah, my sister recently was just in the hospital, and she was in for 5 days. But when she went in, she weighed in at 77 pounds.
Wow, that's dangerous.
How old is she?
Pardon me?
How old is she?
She's 66.
Wow.
Yeah, so the interesting thing again is it's also understanding the mindset.
Yeah.
And when we feel accepting, then we can't control the other person's thoughts and feelings, but we certainly can influence when we're coming from compassion rather than one of judgment, because some people could look at her and think, you know, they could have judgment on her being skinny.
Mm-hmm.
And having judgment on someone being overweight, and it's like, holy shit, how can you do that? And it's like, well, let me tell you, these are the thoughts that, you know. And so helping people to really get comfortable with knowing their thoughts around food. And I'm thinking, Jeline, with like with their kids eating like fruit roll-ups and her eating, you know, bagel and cream cheese. It's not so much that the bagel and cream cheese is the bad guy. It's the mindset that puts us into the state of choosing what we do eat.
Well, it's comfort food for her, I'm sure.
So when we're effectively listening, it's really a one-on-one. It's hard to effectively listen in a big group because people usually don't want to talk about their feelings in a
big group. Yeah. That was the hard part too.
Yeah, when you got everyone partying and drinking, and I mean, that's not, you know, but a one-on-one conversation with Heather, when you were having that, were you able to implement some of these effective listening questions and skills and learn more about where she's coming from?
Yeah, one-on-one we did better, but like you say, that's difficult in that type of setting. Is you would think when you're spending a whole weekend with somebody, there's bound to be some opportunity, but yeah, like I said, like I was gone doing something by the time she woke up and got out of the tent, and then by the time I got back, she was into drinking.
So with that being said, did she share anything with you that you could maybe follow up with her now, that in inviting her to meet you for a cup of tea or a coffee so you could carry on that conversation?
Oh yeah, there's lots of things that I processed, that I kind of tucked away. First of all, working 2 jobs. That's not good for her. She can't be doing that for a long, long time. So that's one thing that I would use, is like, is this how you see yourself? Um, um, how long do you think you can keep this up? Like,
Or
that's.
why is she working 2 jobs?
Oh, she told me, I asked her that. She said she has adult things that she wants to buy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
she's ambitious. So she's looking for ways to earn extra income.
Yes.
Yeah, what does she want to buy? That'd be an interesting,
Yeah.
and a fun one too, rather than, and the weight one may become kind of secondary, that
Mhm.
may become more primary,
Yeah.
but discovering, oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. No, she told me that she's going to propose to Keith on Wednesday, and the date was kind of memorable for her, and she told me about that. And yeah, we had a really good discussion when we
Good.
were alone. Yeah.
She's going to propose to
She's
Keith?
going to propose to Keith. Yeah, the loudmouth know-it-all guy.
Oh, that's her boyfriend?
Yep.
She's going to propose to him.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's interesting dynamic.
Yep. Yep.
All right, so what I'm hearing, and Phyllis, you're probably hearing this too, that this Heather is a real potential future business partner for you.
Yeah.
Right? And for you, son, because her needs, she's looking for extra income. She's working 2 jobs for the extra income. There's things that she wants to buy. She's eating probably just because it's quick, easy, convenient. So there's lots of.
She's a caring individual.
Okay.
I asked her if she was a nurse, because she's caring for disabled people. She has the patience to deal with special needs people. Is what she used the right terminology. She's working with special needs people, and that's actually how she met Keith. Is she was caring for his sister.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, very really good friends with my daughter, because she has a really big heart. She's really, yeah.
So there's some great attributes you saw in her. So Phyllis, what would you recommend when you do at this point to set up a meeting to further talk to her and potentially share USANA with her?
She knows that you do USANA already, I presume. Does she, Wendy? Through your daughter?
I'm not sure. I did say to my daughter, like, so when are you having your party? And right away they went September 1st, but that's her housewarming party. It has nothing to do with the Tel Aviv party that she promised she would have for me. So,
oh, well then that their excitement is on that. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, they want to party, drink, and have fun and be young, and they're like I was saying, they're invincible at this point.
Okay. Right. And so maybe part of it is, I don't know if you would do it when you're in person, at your daughter's house visiting, or if you felt, the taking the opportunity to phone and speak to Heather, and of course the standard of, does she have a couple of minutes? And I would compliment her right up front myself. And considering, the fact that you're heart-based, to me, I get the impression does she like to have fun then?
Oh, yeah.
So that would be another one. You're heart-based. You like to have fun. You're working hard. You've got goals set. Seems to me you've got some awesome personality.
Love to care people. She's a nurturer.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
She's a nurturer.
A nurturer. Yeah.
That's why I asked her if she was in nursing.
Right. So perhaps you could compliment her and say, you know what, these, in your own way, letting her know you have got some awesome, beautiful traits, personality traits, and goals in your life and such. And so like you say, if she doesn't know what you're doing, it makes it a little bit, it's a different introduction. in that, you know, what I do, I have come across something that really, with USANA Health Sciences, my daughter may have mentioned it too, and I could see that this could possibly be an excellent fit. And I'm wondering if you're open to exploring it. Maybe we can could we get together for a coffee or lunch and take a look at it and see what jumps out at you. If you don't like what you see, I'm totally fine with that. You know, maybe give that also the opportunity in recognizing if there's not a possible fit. Now, Sheila, are you qualifying people more before you meet them?
Well, I think this is a qualification. Like, I'm meeting complete strangers, but I do ask questions to qualify if there's interest. You know,
right, like, because even though we see, oh, Heather has this, she might not be interested. So
I would say at this stage, I agree with you, Phyllis. The process you just expressed to Wendy, I wouldn't wait for a Cell-Vive party because, again, group setting, people clam up. I mean, Heather is genuinely, I would, you know, a good potential business partner. She's, for all those reasons that Phil stated, so I would definitely call her at this stage. Hi, Heather. The reason I know you got a minute, you know, so clear the time. Yes, she has a minute. The reason I'm calling is, you know, list off, hey, you're ambitious. You're doing all the things that Phyllis just listed that you identified. Would you be open, you know, and I like how Phyllis, how you put it that, you know, my daughter may have mentioned to you, I'm in USANA Health Sciences. I feel that there's some value here that would help you achieve some of these things you're looking for. Would you be open to take a look? We can get together for a coffee or a tea, a lunch. And again, there's no obligation. I just want to show you some information and it may appeal to you in some of your goals.
And let your personality come through, Wendy, so that when you're talking, I'm getting better and better at that as well, is rather than just, you know, make it like that you really do want, I think this would be neat for you to take a look at. However you want to say it with intonality and some excitement and some, so put yourself in that state before you call her so that when you call, you're actually excited and say, you know, I can see some real matchup potentials here, or whatever language you want to use. And I would love to know what your thoughts are.
And even, you could even write out a script, you know, clear the time. So you have a couple minutes, the reason I'm calling, and then write out that piece of the script about the attributes and how, like, really, why are you calling her? So, you know, pre-write it so that you're not stumbling. So then you could just focus on that high energy, that good positive energy that Phyllis is talking about. So you're not kind of stumbling over your words. You know what you're going to say to her at that point, and then offer to connect. And the last thing is kind of like, if they're kind of hesitant, just say there's no obligation. You just want to share some information.
Oh, wow.
Glad you're wearing panties, Phyllis.
Oh my God. Nice panties.
What do you mean, nice panties?
You have to, let's be mindful about what we put in front of the camera.
Yeah, you're laughing, but I don't know what you're laughing about. I went to see if I could find the book with Eric Worre, and so I don't think.
Well, when you turned around, we got a good view of your butt.
Oh, you mean my shorts and my shirt?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, a lighter moment. Thank you. So how does that feel to you, Wendy? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? That sit well with you?
That's very good. That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah,